The night was alive with the electric crackle of lightning casting erratic shadows across the garden. Catherine and I were huddled inside the little playhouse at the end of the yard, our excitement barely contained as we prepared for our sleepover. The storm outside roared with an energy that matched our own, but the playhouse was warm and inviting, filled with the comforting sense of popcorn and chocolate. We spread out our blankets, arranged our pillows, and laughed as we set up our little fort. "I can't believe we're actually doing this," Catherine said, her voice bubbling with anticipation. "It's like we're in our own little world." I grinned, giving a thumbs up. "It's perfect. Just us, a storm, and the most epic sleepover ever." As we settled in, the wind began to pick up, howling through the trees and making the playhouse walls creak slightly. We shrugged it off, attributing the noises to the storm. But soon, I noticed something strange, a series of rhythmic, deliberate footsteps circling around the outside of the playhouse. I froze. "Catherine," I whispered urgently, "do you hear that?" She paused mid-laugh, her expression shifting from amusement to concern. "Hear what?" "Footsteps," I said, leaning closer to her. "Outside. They're going around the playhouse." Catherine's eyes widened. We both strained to listen, the playful atmosphere quickly replaced by a mounting sense of unease. The footsteps didn't sound like a stray animal or a child. They were too deliberate, too purposeful. "What do we do?" Catherine whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't know," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Let's just stay quiet and see if we can figure out what's going on." We turned off the lanterns, plunging the playhouse into near total darkness, save for the occasional flash of lightning that illuminated our anxious faces. The footsteps continued, seemingly unaffected by the storm. Our hearts pounded in our chests as the sound grew louder and closer, until it felt as if someone, or something, was right outside the walls. Then, a new sound emerged, barking. Our dog, Max, had started to bark furiously from somewhere in the yard. His usual calm demeanor was replaced by frantic, aggressive barks that echoed through the night. "What's happening?" Catherine asked, her voice barely audible over the din. "I don't know," I said, trying to peer through the small windows of the playhouse. The lightning flashes revealed nothing but darkness and the swaying trees. Suddenly, the barking stopped. In the eerie silence that followed, we heard the unmistakable sound of a gate creaking open. The footsteps became a hurried scuffle, and then all went quiet. Catherine and I exchanged worried glances. "We should check it out," I said, despite my racing heart. "We need to see what's going on." Slowly, we pushed open the playhouse door, trying to make as little noise as possible. The storm still raged, and the garden was a chaotic blur of shadows and wind. As we stepped outside, we saw that the garden gate was ajar, flapping slightly in the breeze. Max's barking had ceased, but his presence was evident as he remained near the gate, looking intently in the direction of the garage. "Let's check the garage," I suggested, trying to keep my voice firm. We approached the garage, our footsteps crunching on the gravel. To our dismay, the garage door was slightly open. "What if someone's inside?" Catherine whispered, her voice trembling. "Let's find out," I said, though my own nerves were fraying. We peered into the dark interior but saw nothing out of place. The garage was empty, save for the usual tools and clutter. "We should go around back," Catherine said, pointing to the open gate. "Maybe we can see where they went." We cautiously moved toward the back of the yard, where we found the rear gate swinging on its hinges. Fresh footprints in the muddy grass led away from the property. Catherine and I stood there breathless, our hearts racing. "Who could it have been?" Catherine asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. "I have no idea," I replied, "but we should call our parents. They'll know what to do." Back inside the playhouse, we quickly dialed our parents, our voices shaky as we explained what had happened. Soon they arrived, their concerned faces illuminated by the headlights of their cars. They checked the yard thoroughly, but found no trace of anyone. As they reassured us and sent us back inside, Catherine and I huddled together in the playhouse, the storm outside now a distant rumble. We lay there, the unsettling events of the night replaying in our minds. The footsteps, the barking, the shadowy figures, it all seemed like a dark, haunting puzzle that we couldn't quite piece together. "Do you think they'll come back?" Catherine asked, her voice trembling as she clung to her blanket. "I don't know," I said. trying to sound brave. "But we'll be ready if they do." And with that, we lay back down, the storm raging on outside, our imaginations running wild with the mysteries of the night. The storm had finally begun to wane, the distant rumblings of thunder fading into sporadic rumbles as rain turned to a gentle drizzle. Catherine and I lay side by side in the playhouse, wrapped in our blankets, our earlier excitement now replaced by a heavy silence. The sudden quiet made the occasional drip of rain from the eaves of the playhouse sound louder than ever. "I can't believe that just happened," Catherine murmured, her voice a mix of fear and disbelief. "It felt so real." "I know," I said, trying to ignore the shiver running down my spine. "But at least we called our parents. They'll know what to do." Despite our parents' reassurances, the playhouse felt anything but comforting. Shadows seemed to move more ominously in the corners, and every creak of the wooden walls made us jump. We had turned the lanterns back on, but their flickering light only added to the eerie ambience. "I can't stop thinking about those footsteps," Catherine said, her eyes wide. "They were so deliberate, like someone was making sure we heard them." I nodded, staring at the ceiling. "And what about Max? He never barks like that. It's almost like he was trying to warn us." A gust of wind howled outside, rattling the small windows of the playhouse. Catherine and I exchanged uneasy glances. The wind seemed to carry with it an unsettling sense of anticipation, as if something was lurking just beyond our sight. "Do you think we should have stayed outside and looked for more clues?" Catherine asked. "I don't know," I replied, shaking my head. "It was pretty scary out there. Besides, our parents said there was nothing to worry about." Catherine bit her lip, still clearly anxious. "What if it was someone trying to break into the garage, or worse?" "We should try to get some sleep," I said, attempting to sound more confident than I felt. "Maybe it was just a prank or someone trying to get out of the rain." But sleep was elusive. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the dark shadows moving around the playhouse, the unsettling sound of footsteps echoing in my mind. I could hear Catherine's breathing, her occasional whispers of unease mixing with the faint sounds of the storm outside. Hours seemed to stretch into eternity. At some point, I must have dozed off, only to be jolted awake by the sound of a loud thud coming from outside. My heart leapt into my throat, and I turned to Catherine, who was already wide awake. "What was that?" Catherine whispered urgently. "I don't know," I said, trying to steady my breathing, but it sounded like it came from the garage. We both got up and peered through the small windows of the playhouse. The rain had stopped, and the night was cloaked in darkness, but the vague outline of the garage was still visible. The thought of someone possibly still being out there made the inside of the playhouse feel even more stifling. "I think we should check again," Catherine said, her voice trembling but determined. I nodded in agreement, though every instinct screamed at me to stay put. Slowly, we opened the playhouse door and stepped outside. The cool air hit us, sending a shiver through our bodies. We approached the garage cautiously, our footsteps muffled by the wet grass. As we reached the garage, I noticed something odd. The garage door was slightly ajar again, just as it had been before. My heart raced as we carefully pushed it open wider, but the interior was still empty. The tools and old boxes lay where they had been earlier, untouched and undisturbed. "Maybe it was just a stray branch or something," I suggested, trying to rationalize the noise we heard. Catherine nodded, but her eyes remained worried. "Yeah, maybe." Just then, we heard a distant, faint noise, a quiet scraping sound, like something being dragged across the ground. Catherine and I exchanged nervous glances. "It's coming from the backyard," Catherine said, her voice barely above a whisper. We turned and made our way to the back gate once more. The faint sound continued, leading us toward the darkened yard. Our flashlights cast long, wavering beams as we scanned the area. "Do you see anything?" I asked, straining my eyes in the dim light. "Not really," Catherine replied, her flashlight illuminating only dark shadows and wet grass. "But I think we should—" A sudden rustling sound made us both freeze. We swung our flashlights toward the noise, and for a moment the beam fell on something that looked like a discarded piece of clothing tangled in the underbrush. My breath caught in my throat. "Is that—" Catherine started, but the rest of her question was lost as we heard the distant rumble of a car engine starting. The sound was faint, but unmistakable. Someone had been here and they were leaving. We turned and ran back to the playhouse, the adrenaline giving us a burst of speed. Back inside, we huddled together, our hearts pounding. The unsettling events of the night had left us shaken, but we knew we had to remain vigilant. We resolved to stay awake, listening intently for any more sounds and hoping that the mysterious intruder was long gone. As the first light of dawn began to creep into the playhouse, we finally allowed ourselves to relax slightly. The night had been long and terrifying, but we were determined to get to the bottom of what had happened. Little did we know that the events of this night were just the beginning of a mystery that would unravel in ways we could never have anticipated. The first rays of dawn filtered through the playhouse's small windows, casting a soft, warm glow over Catherine and me. After a restless night, we felt both exhausted and on edge. The events of the previous night had left us with more questions than answers, and the fleeting sense of safety brought by morning did little to ease our unease. "Well, we made it through the night," Catherine said, with a tired but relieved smile. "I guess that's something." I nodded, though the dread from the previous night still lingered. "Yeah, but what was that scraping noise? And why did someone run away so suddenly?" Catherine sighed, rubbing her eyes. "I don't know, but we need to figure out what's going on. Maybe there's something we missed." We decided to investigate the yard and the garage more thoroughly before our parents came to pick us up. Stepping outside, the air was crisp and cool, the garden now looking serene and ordinary. The playhouse and the garage, though still intact, seemed like they were hiding secrets from us. We walked back to the garage, the early morning light revealing more details than it had the night before. As we examined the garage, we noticed a small, unusual mark on the doorframe, something that looked like a scratch, almost as if it had been forced open. "Look at this," I said, pointing to the mark. "This wasn't here before." Catherine knelt beside the doorframe, inspecting it closely. "It does look like someone tried to pry it open. But why?" I frowned, trying to recall the events of the night. Maybe they were trying to get into the garage to steal something or hide from something. We turned our attention back to the backyard. The ground was still wet from the rain, and the footprints we had seen earlier had become less distinct. We followed the trail as best as we could, moving toward the area where we had heard the scraping noise. In the corner of the yard, near a cluster of overgrown shrubs, we found something surprising, a torn piece of fabric snagged on a thorny bush. It was old and worn, like it had been there for a long time. "This looks like it's been here for ages," Catherine said, her voice tinged with curiosity. "But why was it dragged out here?" I reached out and carefully examined the fabric. It had a faded pattern that reminded me of something, but I couldn't quite place it. Maybe it's a clue. It could belong to someone who was here before us. "Let's keep it," Catherine said, carefully putting the fabric into a plastic bag she had brought along. "It might be important." As we continued our search, our conversation shifted to the odd occurrence from the night before. "Do you remember if anyone else had access to the yard or garage recently?" I asked. "Maybe someone we know?" Catherine thought for a moment. "Not really. I mean, we've had friends over, but no one who would have a reason to do something like this." Just then, we heard the distant sound of a car approaching. Catherine and I hurried back to the playhouse to gather our things before our parents arrived. As we packed up, I couldn't shake the feeling that the previous night's events were somehow connected to something from the past. When our parents arrived, they were relieved to see us safe but concerned about what had happened. We shared our findings with them, including the torn fabric and the strange marks on the garage door. "Thanks for looking into this," my mum said, her face showing a mixture of concern and curiosity. "We'll have a closer look, but you girls should try to put this behind you for now." We agreed, though the mystery still gnawed at us. After our parents left with the promise to investigate further, Catherine and I sat in the garden, contemplating the events of the night. "There's definitely something strange about all this," Catherine said, her brows furrowed. "It feels like there's more to it than just some random intruder." "I agree," I said. "But what could it be, and why would someone target us?" We decided to take a break from our investigation and grab some lunch. As we sat in the kitchen discussing possible theories, Catherine's younger brother, Jake, wandered in. "Hey, did you guys hear about the old lady who used to live in that house across the street?" Jake asked, looking curious. I heard she used to collect all sorts of weird stuff and then disappeared a long time ago." Catherine and I exchanged puzzled glances. "No, we didn't hear about that," I said. "Why?" "Well," Jake continued, "I heard that her house was always locked up tight, and people said she had all sorts of strange things in there. Some people thought she was a bit odd." This new piece of information struck a chord with both of us. "Do you know where we can find out more?" Catherine asked eagerly. Jake shrugged. "Maybe you can ask Mrs. Henderson. She lives nearby and knows a lot about the neighborhood's history." Later that afternoon, we visited Mrs. Henderson, an elderly woman who had lived in the neighborhood for decades. She welcomed us warmly and listened intently as we described the strange events and the fabric we had found. "Oh, you must be talking about Miss Eliza," Mrs. Henderson said with a knowing look. She was quite a character. Her house was always a bit of a mystery. Some people say she had a hidden room filled with strange artifacts and old papers. Catherine and I exchanged excited glances. "Do you know if her house is still standing?" I asked. "Yes," Mrs. Henderson said. "It's been vacant for years, but it's still there. If you're curious, you might find some old records or even something connected to what you're looking for." With this new lead, Catherine and I were more determined than ever. As we left Mrs. Henderson's house, we made a plan to visit the old, mysterious house the next day. The pieces of the puzzle were slowly coming together, and we were eager to uncover the truth behind the strange occurrences in our neighborhood. The following morning, Catherine and I woke up with a sense of purpose. We had decided to investigate the old house that once belonged to Miss Eliza, the eccentric lady Mrs. Henderson had told us about. Our curiosity was piqued, and the sense of adventure outweighed our lingering fears from the previous night. After a quick breakfast, we headed over to the vacant property. The old house stood at the end of a quiet street, its weathered facade a stark contrast to the neat modern homes surrounding it. The yard was overgrown with weeds, and the paint on the house had faded, giving it an air of neglect and mystery. "There it is," Catherine said, her voice a mix of awe and apprehension as we approached the front gate. "I can't believe we're actually doing this." I nodded, my heart pounding with a blend of excitement and nervousness. "I know. It's like stepping into a different world." The gate was slightly ajar, and we pushed it open carefully. The gravel path leading to the front door was uneven and cracked. As we walked toward the entrance, we noticed that the front door was locked, but the old-fashioned keyhole and rusty latch made it look like it hadn't been used in years. "Do you think we can get inside?" Catherine asked, peering through the dusty windows. "I'm not sure," I said, trying to peer through the grime-covered glass, "but we might be able to find another way in." We walked around the house, examining the exterior. The back of the house had a small, overgrown garden and a rickety old shed. The windows in the back were also boarded up, but one of them had a loose board that we might be able to pry open. Catherine and I carefully removed the loose board, revealing a small, dusty window. With some effort, we managed to push it open enough to squeeze through. Once inside, we were greeted by the musty smell of old furniture and the faint scent of mildew. The interior of the house was dimly lit by the weak morning light filtering through the boarded-up windows. "Let's look around," I said, my voice echoing slightly in the empty rooms. "We need to find any clues that could help us understand what happened." The house was a maze of rooms filled with old, covered furniture and stacks of dusty boxes. We moved cautiously, each step making the floorboards creak ominously. Catherine found an old staircase leading to the upper floor, and we decided to start there. As we climbed the stairs, we noticed that the walls were lined with faded photographs and strange drawings. They seemed to depict various symbols and mysterious figures, adding to the house's eerie atmosphere. "Do you see this?" Catherine asked, pointing to a large, intricate symbol painted on one of the walls. "What do you think it means?" "I don't know," I said, examining the symbol closely, "but it looks like something out of a ritual or a spell." We continued to explore, finally reaching the top floor. Here, the rooms were even more cluttered with old books, dusty artifacts, and what appeared to be several locked trunks. One trunk in particular, which was covered in ornate carvings, caught our attention. "This looks interesting," Catherine said, kneeling beside the trunk. "I wonder what's inside." The trunk was locked, but the lock appeared old and rusty. We tried to pry it open with a screwdriver we found in one of the drawers, but it was no use. The trunk remained firmly shut. Just then, we heard a faint noise coming from below, a distant thud or bump. We froze, listening intently. The sound was followed by an unsettling silence. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my heart racing. "Yes," Catherine replied, her voice barely audible. "Let's check it out." We carefully descended the stairs, moving quietly to avoid making any noise. As we reached the ground floor, the noise stopped, and everything seemed eerily still. We searched the rooms, but there was no sign of anyone or anything out of place. "That was weird," Catherine said, sounding both relieved and confused. "Maybe it was just the house settling." "Yeah," I said, though I wasn't entirely convinced. "Let's keep looking." We returned to the trunk and continued our efforts to open it. After a few more attempts, we finally managed to pry the lock open. Inside, we found a collection of old papers, faded photographs, and a few peculiar items. A small, intricately carved wooden box, a bundle of old letters tied with a ribbon, and an old leather-bound journal. Catherine picked up the journal and opened it carefully. The pages were filled with neat handwriting, detailing various events and observations. As we skimmed through the journal, we found several references to strange occurrences and unexplained phenomena. "Look at this," Catherine said, pointing to a passage. "It mentions someone trying to break into the house and hide in the garden, and there's a note about a hidden room." "A hidden room?" I repeated, intrigued. "Where could it be?" We continued reading, trying to decipher any clues that might lead us to the hidden room. The journal entries mentioned a specific location in the house where Miss Eliza had hidden valuable or secret items, but the exact location was unclear. "Maybe there's a hidden door or something," I suggested, looking around the room. We began to search the room more thoroughly, examining the walls and floor for any signs of hidden compartments or secret passages. After what felt like hours of searching, Catherine noticed a faint outline of a door behind a large bookcase. "This looks like it could be it," Catherine said, excitement evident in her voice. "Let's see if we can open it." We carefully moved the bookcase, revealing a small hidden door. With some effort, we managed to open it, and we discovered a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. "This is it," I said, my heart pounding with anticipation. "Let's see where it leads." We descended the staircase slowly, the air growing colder and more musty as we went. At the bottom, we found a small, dimly lit room filled with old, dusty objects and a large wooden chest in the center. Catherine and I approached the chest with a mix of excitement and trepidation. We opened it to reveal a collection of old, valuable items, jewelry, coins, and an assortment of strange artifacts. Among the items, we found a stack of old letters and a mysterious amulet with an intricate design. "This must have been what Miss Eliza was hiding," Catherine said, her voice filled with awe. "But what does it all mean?" We carefully examined the letters, hoping to find more clues about the significance of the artifacts. The letters detailed Miss Eliza's experiences and observations, revealing that she had been researching ancient symbols and rituals related to hidden knowledge and protection. "This amulet," I said, holding up the ornate piece, "it looks like it might be connected to those symbols we saw on the walls." As we continued to explore the hidden room, we realized that we had uncovered something much larger than we had anticipated. The secrets of Miss Eliza's house were more complex and intriguing than we could have imagined. "Do you think this has anything to do with the events of last night?" Catherine asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. "It's hard to say," I replied, "but it seems like there's a connection. We need to figure out how all of this fits together." We decided to take the artifacts and letters with us, planning to show them to Mrs. Henderson and our parents for further investigation. As we left the house, we couldn't shake the feeling that we were on the brink of uncovering a mystery that had been buried for years. The secrets of Miss Eliza's house had opened up a new chapter in our investigation, and we were more determined than ever to find out the truth. The drive back to our house was filled with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Catherine and I carried the old chest and its contents, carefully wrapped in blankets to avoid any damage. The weight of the artifacts and letters seemed to mirror the weight of the mystery we were trying to unravel. Our minds buzzed with questions and theories as we approached our home. We decided to meet with Mrs. Henderson first. Her knowledge of the neighborhood's history might provide additional insights into the artifacts we had discovered. After a quick call, we arranged to bring the items to her house that afternoon. When we arrived at Mrs. Henderson's home, she greeted us warmly, her eyes lighting up with curiosity as she saw the chest. "Good to see you girls again," she said, ushering us inside. "What have you found?" We carefully unpacked the items on her dining table, laying out the old letters, the amulet, and the other artifacts. Mrs. Henderson examined them with a practiced eye, her expression growing more intrigued as she delved into the details. "This is quite a collection," Mrs. Henderson said, picking up the amulet and studying it closely. "This symbol," she pointed to the intricate design on the amulet, "is very old. It's associated with protection and ancient rituals. Miss Eliza must have been quite interested in these subjects." We exchanged glances, excited by the new information. "Do you think it has any connection to what happened last night?" Catherine asked. "It's possible," Mrs. Henderson said thoughtfully. Miss Eliza was known for her interest in the supernatural and unexplained phenomena. Her research might have attracted attention from those who sought her knowledge or her artifacts. We recounted the events of the previous night to Mrs. Henderson, describing the footsteps, the barking dog, and the mysterious noises. Her face grew more concerned as she listened. "It sounds like someone might have been looking for something specific," Mrs. Henderson said. "Perhaps they knew about Miss Eliza's collection and were trying to find it." We nodded, our minds racing with the implications. "What do you suggest we do next?" I asked. Mrs. Henderson considered this for a moment. "I would recommend taking these items to an expert in historical artifacts or symbols. They might be able to provide more context and help you understand their significance. In the meantime, I'll look into any more information I can find about Miss Eliza and her research." Grateful for her help, we packed up the artifacts and headed back home. Our parents were waiting for us, eager to hear what we had discovered. We shared everything with them, from the hidden room to the intriguing amulet. "Sounds like you've uncovered something important," my dad said, nodding thoughtfully. "We'll help you find an expert who can shed more light on these artifacts." The next day, we visited a local historian who specialized in ancient symbols and artifacts. Dr. Allen was a middle-aged man with a keen interest in obscure historical topics. He greeted us with enthusiasm as we presented the amulet and the other items. "This is fascinating," Dr. Allen said, examining the amulet under a magnifying glass. "The symbols on this amulet are indeed ancient and have been associated with various rituals intended for protection and warding off evil spirits." He carefully reviewed the letters and other artifacts, noting their historical and cultural significance. Miss Eliza appears to have been involved in some serious research. These letters suggest she was part of a group interested in uncovering hidden knowledge and ancient practices. It's possible she was trying to protect herself or her findings from those who might misuse them. Catherine and I exchanged worried looks. "Do you think someone might still be after these artifacts?" Catherine asked. Dr. Allen nodded thoughtfully. "It's possible. If Miss Eliza's research was as significant as these artifacts suggest, there could be individuals or groups interested in what she discovered. You should take precautions and be careful." We left Dr. Allen's office with a renewed sense of purpose. We needed to protect the artifacts and continue our investigation. The sense of danger was now more real than ever, but so was our determination to uncover the truth. That evening, we gathered with our parents and Mrs. Henderson to discuss the next steps. Mrs. Henderson had managed to find some old records about Miss Eliza, which she shared with us. "These documents provide more context about her work," Mrs. Henderson said, handing us a folder filled with old newspaper clippings and correspondence. "It looks like she was involved in several controversial studies. There were rumors about her having found something significant, a discovery that some believed had the power to change historical understanding." We pored over the documents, finding references to secret meetings, hidden manuscripts, and intense debates within scholarly circles. It became clear that Miss Eliza had been at the center of something much larger than we had originally thought. "This is incredible," I said, feeling the weight of our investigation growing heavier. "It's like we've uncovered a piece of history that's been hidden for a long time." As we reviewed the last of the documents, we found a peculiar note hidden in one of the files. It was a cryptic message, written in an old-fashioned script and signed with a strange symbol that matched the one on the amulet. The message read, "The truth is buried where shadows fall. Seek the light to unveil the past." Asterisk. "What does this mean?" Catherine asked, her voice filled with curiosity and concern. "I'm not entirely sure," Mrs. Henderson said, "but it sounds like a clue. It might be pointing us towards something we need to find, perhaps a location or a specific item related to Miss Eliza's work." Determined to follow the clue, we made plans to revisit the old house and search for any locations where shadows might fall. We knew that our investigation was far from over and that the secrets of Miss Eliza's past were still waiting to be uncovered. With a sense of urgency and anticipation, we prepared for our next adventure, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead in our quest to reveal the truth. The next morning dawned clear and bright, a stark contrast to the ominous events of the previous days. Catherine and I were up early, driven by the urgency of the cryptic message we had discovered. Our plan was to return to Miss Eliza's house and search for any hidden clues related to the note's mysterious instructions. We arrived at the old house, its weathered exterior still casting an air of mystery. Armed with flashlights, notebooks, and a small toolkit, we approached the property with renewed determination. The house seemed even more imposing in the daylight, its silent presence a reminder of the secrets it held. "Where do we start?" Catherine asked, glancing at the house's facade. "The note mentioned shadows and light. Do you think it's referring to something specific?" "I'm not sure," I said, "but it could mean that there's a place in the house where light and shadow play an important role. Maybe there's a hidden compartment or a clue that's only visible in a certain light." We decided to focus on the rooms we hadn't fully explored yet. We began with the ground floor, examining each room for any signs of hidden mechanisms or unusual features. The house seemed to taunt us with its creaks and groans, adding an eerie quality to our search. Catherine inspected the old bookcases and furniture, while I checked the walls and floors for any unusual markings. We carefully measured the angles and light sources, trying to determine if there was any significance to the way light fell in different parts of the house. Hours passed with little progress, and we were beginning to feel frustrated. The house, though intriguing, seemed to be offering no new secrets. Our hope was waning when Catherine suddenly called out from the library, "Hey, you need to see this!" I hurried over to find Catherine standing in front of a large, dusty bookcase. She had discovered a loose panel behind some old books. It was barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. "This panel wasn't here before," Catherine said, her eyes wide with excitement. "It looks like it's been hidden." We carefully pried open the panel, revealing a small, dusty compartment. Inside was an old, leather-bound book, much like the one we had found in the hidden room. It appeared to be a journal or ledger, its cover worn but still intact. "This might be what we're looking for," I said, reaching for the book. "Let's see what's inside." We opened the book, and its pages were filled with detailed notes and diagrams. The writing was a mix of handwritten text and elaborate sketches depicting various symbols and rituals similar to those we had seen before. The notes mentioned a hidden chamber and referred to a specific location in the house where shadows converge. Catherine and I exchanged a look of understanding. "This must be the place the note was talking about," she said. "We need to find where shadows converge." We returned to our search, now focusing on identifying areas in the house where light and shadows intersected in interesting ways. We checked the large windows, heavy curtains, and old light fixtures. The house's layout was complex, with many corners and alcoves that could potentially hide something. As the afternoon sun began to cast long shadows through the windows, we noticed a particularly interesting spot in the corner of the living room. The sunlight was filtering through a small, dusty window, casting a distinct shadow on the wall. The shadow formed a pattern that matched one of the symbols in the book. "This could be it," I said, pointing to the shadow pattern. "Let's see if there's anything behind this wall." We examined the wall and found a small, barely noticeable indentation that seemed to align with the shadow pattern. With some effort, we managed to move a portion of the wall, revealing a hidden alcove behind it. Inside the alcove, we found an old, weathered box. It was intricately carved and appeared to be quite old. Our hearts raced as we carefully opened the box, revealing its contents: more letters, ancient maps, and a collection of unusual artifacts. Among the items, we found a letter addressed to Miss Eliza from someone named A.L., the same initials that appeared in the cryptic note we had found earlier. The letter discussed a planned meeting to discuss the final piece of the puzzle, referring to a significant discovery that Miss Eliza had made. "This letter is crucial," Catherine said, reading the document. "It talks about a meeting and a final piece. It must be related to the hidden chamber." We continued to explore the box, finding more clues about Miss Eliza's research and her involvement in uncovering hidden knowledge. The maps detailed various locations and symbols, some of which seemed to correspond to the symbols we had seen earlier. As we sifted through the documents, we found a map with a marked location, a spot in the garden that was directly outside the hidden chamber we had just uncovered. "We need to check the garden," I said. "There might be something buried or hidden there." We made our way outside and headed to the marked spot in the garden. The area was overgrown, with weeds and tangled vines obscuring the ground. We began to dig carefully, hoping to uncover something significant. After some time, our efforts paid off. We unearthed a small metal box buried beneath the soil. It was heavy and well preserved, with an intricate lock that matched the design of the artifacts we had found earlier. "This could be it," Catherine said, excitement evident in her voice. "Let's open it." With a sense of anticipation, we used the small tools we had brought to unlock the box. Inside, we found a collection of ancient scrolls, old manuscripts, and a final letter from Miss Eliza. The letter detailed her discovery of a powerful artifact, a key to understanding ancient knowledge and hidden truths. "This is incredible," I said, carefully reading the letter. "Miss Eliza found something truly remarkable. We need to take this to Dr. Allen and see if he can help us decipher it." We carefully packed up the artifacts and headed back to Dr. Allen's office. The weight of our discoveries felt both thrilling and daunting. We were on the brink of uncovering something monumental, and the stakes seemed higher than ever. As we approached Dr. Allen's office, we couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and apprehension. The secrets of Miss Eliza's past were coming to light, and we were determined to understand their full significance. With each new discovery, we were drawing closer to unveiling the truth behind the mysteries that had begun with a simple overnight stay in a garden playhouse. Dr. Allen greeted us with interest as we laid out the newly found artifacts and documents. His eyes widened as he examined the ancient scrolls and manuscripts, and he began to delve into their content with a sense of urgency. "This is extraordinary," Dr. Allen said after reviewing the materials. "Miss Eliza's research was far more significant than we realized. These scrolls and manuscripts contain information about ancient rites and knowledge that could reshape our understanding of history." He carefully studied the final letter from Miss Eliza. "It seems that she was close to a major breakthrough. The artifact she mentions could be a key to unlocking hidden truths about our past." Catherine and I exchanged excited glances. "What should we do next?" Catherine asked. Dr. Allen looked thoughtful. "We need to fully decipher these scrolls and manuscripts. There may be instructions or clues about the location of the artifact Miss Eliza discovered. I suggest we work together to analyze these documents and determine our next steps." With Dr. Allen's expertise, Catherine and I felt more confident than ever. We were on the verge of a historic discovery, and we were determined to see it through. As we left Dr. Allen's office, we felt a renewed sense of purpose. The shadows of the past were slowly revealing their secrets, and we were ready to face whatever lay ahead in our quest for the truth. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity and discovery. Dr. Allen, Catherine, and I spent countless hours deciphering the ancient scrolls and manuscripts we had found. Each day brought new insights and clues, leading us closer to understanding the full extent of Miss Eliza's research. Dr. Allen's analysis revealed that Miss Eliza had been on the brink of uncovering a significant historical artifact, one that was believed to hold immense knowledge and power. The manuscripts detailed a series of rituals and instructions for locating and accessing this artifact, but they were incomplete. Despite the challenges, we managed to piece together enough information to determine the artifact's location. The final clue pointed us to an old, forgotten cellar beneath the house, a place we had not yet explored. "Everything points to that cellar," Dr. Allen said, studying the final instructions. "If Miss Eliza's research is accurate, the artifact should be hidden there." With renewed determination, we prepared to search the cellar. We gathered our equipment and made our way to the old house, our excitement palpable. The sun was setting as we approached, casting long shadows over the property. "This is it," Catherine said, her voice filled with a mix of anticipation and nervousness. "Let's find out what's down there." We located the entrance to the cellar in a corner of the garden, obscured by overgrown plants and debris. With some effort, we cleared the entrance and carefully descended the crumbling stairs. The air was musty and cool, and the dim light from our flashlights barely illuminated the space. The cellar was vast and filled with old furniture, boxes, and discarded items. We searched through the clutter, following the instructions from the manuscripts to guide us. After what felt like hours, we discovered a hidden door at the back of the cellar. It was covered in dust and cobwebs, but the design matched the symbols we had seen earlier. With a sense of awe, we carefully opened the door, revealing a small chamber beyond. Inside the chamber, we found a pedestal with a beautifully ornate box resting on it. The box was adorned with intricate carvings and symbols, and it radiated an almost palpable sense of significance. "This must be it," I said, my voice filled with reverence. The artifact Miss Eliza was protecting. We approached the pedestal with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Dr. Allen carefully examined the box, noting its design and construction. It was clear that this was an artifact of great importance. "Let's open it," Catherine said, her voice steady but filled with anticipation. Dr. Allen nodded and began to carefully unlock the box. As the lid creaked open, we were met with the sight of a stunningly intricate manuscript bound in ancient leather. The manuscript was adorned with detailed illustrations and text, documenting lost knowledge and ancient practices. "This manuscript is a treasure trove of historical and esoteric knowledge," Dr. Allen said, his voice filled with awe. "It could change our understanding of ancient cultures and practices." We carefully examined the manuscript, noting its detailed accounts of rituals, symbols, and historical events. It was clear that Miss Eliza had uncovered something truly remarkable, a key to understanding ancient wisdom and knowledge. As we took the manuscript to Dr. Allen's lab for further study, we reflected on our journey. What had begun as a simple overnight adventure in a garden playhouse had led us to uncover a hidden chapter of history. The secrets of Miss Eliza's past were now revealed, and we had played a crucial role in bringing them to light. Our discovery was met with excitement and acclaim in the academic community. Dr. Allen's analysis and presentation of the manuscript drew significant attention, and Miss Eliza's work was finally recognized for its importance and impact. Catherine and I were hailed as young explorers who had uncovered one of the most significant historical finds in recent years. Our names were mentioned in articles and reports, and we received praise for our perseverance and dedication. As the excitement of our discovery settled, we took a moment to reflect on our adventure. The mystery of Miss Eliza's house had been solved, but the lessons we learned and the experiences we shared would stay with us forever. Our journey had taught us the value of curiosity, perseverance, and teamwork. It had shown us that even the smallest clues could lead to the most extraordinary discoveries. As we looked back on the old house, now a place of historical significance, we felt a deep sense of accomplishment. We had uncovered a hidden chapter of history and honored the legacy of Miss Eliza. With the manuscript safely preserved and the mystery resolved, Catherine and I knew that our adventure had come to a close. But the memories of our journey and the thrill of discovery would remain with us always, a testament to the power of exploration and the pursuit of knowledge. And so, with the echoes of our adventure still resonating in our hearts, we moved forward, ready for whatever new challenges and discoveries awaited us in the future.